Hello and good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 5th webisode of Park Conversations, titled Embracing the Second Half of Life, in celebration of Elderly Filipino Week, brought to you by the National Parks Development Committee, an attached agency of the Department of Tourism tasked to develop, preserve, and manage Luneta and other urban parks. I am your moderator, Jez, for this evening. And before I give the floor and introduce our speaker, I'd like to remind you all of the following. So tonight's Park Conversations webisode is also streaming live on Facebook through our Facebook page, npdc.ph, and will be available on demand after this live discussion. We encourage everyone to share this webinar with your social media friends and use the hashtag #ParkConversations. We'd also like to hear from you during the live discussion. So kung meron po kayong mga tanong para sa aming guest this evening, our guest speaker, please send it through the Q&A button, which is also found in the lower portion of the screen. Or if you're on Facebook Live, sa comment section po, pwede kayong magtanong dito sa sa comment section ng Facebook. So please note that we will do our best to accommodate all the questions subject to the availability of the time of our speaker. And lastly, for those who will successfully answer and submit our survey form, they will be able to receive a copy of our digital certificate. So we will be posting the link of the survey at the end of this webinar at the chat box. So please watch out for that, and it will be in the comments section as well for those who are watching on Facebook. So please review your entry details before hitting that submit button, especially as your name will appear on that digital certificate. So introducing tonight's special guest speaker, tonight's webisode, again in celebration of Elderly Filipino Week, we have a wonderful discussion. And we have here the founder and executive director of On the Third Day Renewal and Formation Center and Cherimoya Eco-Spirituality and Retreat Center, Miss Lita Quimson-Feliciano. Yes, Miss Lita Quimson-Feliciano. Fully alive and wild at heart, Lita has been designing programs and retreats and courses since the ministry started 8 years ago. She prepares sacred landscapes and is a believer and encourager of connecting with God through surroundings. So bagay na bagay po to for our parks, no? Lita uses also expressive arts in various forms to encourage her retreatants to know God and themselves more deeply. She's an experienced spiritual director in various local and international institutions. She holds a master's degree in ministry, majoring in spiritual formation and certificates in spiritual direction and formation. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's start our discussion tonight introducing Miss Lita Quimson-Feliciano. Welcome.
Hi, Jess. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you so much. So happy to have you here. I think we're very excited to hear what you have to say to all of us.
Well, hello, everybody. Good evening to everyone. I'm going to talk about embracing the second half of life for this evening. And I'm going to share my screen. Give me a second here. Hang on. Just a minute. There you are. A little bit of technical difficulties at our age. And I'm sure everybody there over 50, we can relate. So I'm going to talk about the human journey, actually. So it's about where do we begin and where do we end. Those are the two halves of life. And I think what I've written here is where the meaning of the whole person is put into question. So what we're talking about here is you have a first half of life, and then you hit a point where you start to question what's up with this life. And that ranges from about 35 to 65. And the first half is between the time you are born to 35. So this is what we call the midlife, the challenge of midlife. I took a lot of material from a monk called Anselm Grun, and he wrote about this midlife crisis thing because he made a observation about what was happening with a lot of the monks in their monastery. This is a German monk who was observing that at around the age of 40 and beyond, several monks over the age of 40 were very much disturbed and were very much deciding to leave the monastery. So this was disturbing the flow of the community. And so he decided to do some research to find out what is this thing about midlife crisis and what is this thing of the first half of life and the second half of life, which is now seeming to be what makes up the human journey. the destiny, and the origin. So we started in the origin and we ended up on the second half of life. And what surprised him was these monks gave 20 years of their life in service to God. And suddenly, something was happening to them that they wanted a change. So it seems to me that there was really no denying that there is really something that happens somewhere in between 35 and 65 that makes you want to make a change in what you've been doing all your life. So let's look at this phenomenon. Let's understand the design of the human journey. Well, firstly, I ask all of you who are here tonight, where do you think you are in your own journey? Are you in the first half of life or are you in the second half of life? And I guess as you listen more to what I'm about to say, you would be able to determine, oh, I'm already in the second half of life, or it's a range. So it's 35 to 65 or beyond. So it's quite a big range. So it's good to hear where you're at. And then we're doing this also to understand our design, is to find the traits that might be obstacles to growth. So in understanding where you are in the journey, you may want to understand what have I got, or what is hindering me to become the full self that I have been designed to become. So there might be some things that you're stuck in, that might be obstacles, and you're wondering, how come hindi ako makausod sa buhay? I can't move forward. I can't understand why I can't move. So I seem to be stuck in a certain place. So that's still part of the journey. So having to look at where are you? Are you stuck? Are you moving? Do you think you're growing? Or are you deepening? Or are you beginning to understand things as you go along? Then to observe the external influence in my life versus the movement of internal noticing. So this is like, what do I mean by this? What I mean by this is like, I was just talking to somebody today, and she was talking all about how her family has such great expectations of her. And then she was also then shifted to talking about, but this is really what I want. I really don't want what my family is expecting from me. Then they don't understand me. So that's what I'm talking about, to observe the external influences in our life versus the movement of the internal noticing. What am I noticing? I'm noticing that I'm not really agreeable to their expectations, that I have different expectations from my family. So more or less, this is more or less what it's gonna cover. And I'd like you to think about these things and, where are you at your journey? Are you stuck anywhere? Are there things that make you stuck? Are there any circumstances that stops you from growing? And finally, which one is external and which one is internal? And now, where am I going from here? So where are you in your journey? Probably a good question to ask yourself, how old am I? Where am I? Am I in the middle of looking for a job? Have I settled down already? Are my children left home? Have me and my partner, we don't know each other. We don't really know each other after 25 years of marriage. That's what I mean. Where are you in your journey? Okay, and where do you want to go? Looking out for direction. Where do you aspire to go? Where do you wish if you're feeling you're going towards the end of going to the second half of your life, you have a lot to look back to now. So you're in a point in your life, oh, I have many memories, and I'm getting a sense that my time is running out. So if my time is running out, what direction how do I want to live my life in the last 20 to 40 years, which I now realize, oh, I've already lived 40 years of my life. How do I want to live the second half of my life? So let's look at it. Finding myself and my design. Okay, let's start with the first half. Okay, the first half is about moving from one spot to another spot, one job to another, one relationship to another. That's 35 and below, just to remind you, okay? Or 40 and below. Passing by, knowing this isn't it. So you're here, you went to this job, and you sort of yes, this job is good, but it's not the perfect job. I gotta move on, look for another job. Need to move on till I find my peace and where I feel like I have arrived. There's this sense of, no, this is not good enough. Or you might get into a relationship, have a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and then things don't go well. And then you say, no, that wasn't the person for me. So you go out again, you start dating again, and then you go out, you find somebody again, and then you try it out again. And that's a typical first half of life where you're moving from one point to another point. And it involves jobs, it involves relationships, it involves sort of a pause, like not satisfied, lack of satisfaction, that sort of thing. And it's not yet that what you're looking for. So let's look at this. If you see, this is there's a couple of points here, right? And this is the arc of life, finding our way and the messy raw material of our own unique lives. That's what happens in the first half of life, right? And if you see those points, they're like stops that you've gone through and you're not satisfied and you think like, no, that's not for me. Okay, I tried that. I've learned a couple of things from that, but that's not for me. So what happens when you're crossing over? You're beginning to learning to finally become comfortable under your skin. This is me and I'm okay with this. Somehow, part of that saying, this is me, and I'm beginning to consider stopping here now because I'm happy here, also is saying, I really don't care if you don't like what I'm doing. That's part of the second half of life. The first half of life is searching for meaning, while the second half is arriving at a destiny, right? So I put this picture here because it's like, you can see there's a kind of crossing over, like I was here before and now I'm going to this. You can feel that. You'll feel that in your body, you'll feel that in your emotions, you'll feel that in your mind, like a crossing over. So if we're going to talk about these two halves of life, I want to begin about when you start to become an adult. So there are several stages in adulthood, and one of the authors I was reading named it, this was Sheehy on Passages, named it Tryout 20s, Turbulent 30s, and Flourishing 40s. How does that sound for you? Can you relate to that? And here's what it looks like. So starting the 20s is like graduation, then you're starting to look for a job, then you're starting to look for a home, and then probably you're starting to have a family. Or you might have a family first and then you look for a home. So everybody does it uniquely in different ways. But anyway, the point about adulting is really about the pressure to build your life. That you're planning ahead of you. Like, okay, I'm going to have to leave home now. I can't be under my parents' roof for the rest of my life. And there's this pressure that you're feeling that you have to build a life ahead of you. And in that, as you saw that, as I presented earlier in this slide, that there's actually, even in that, there's three times of transition there. Because this is a little bit about, we're talking about transition. So movement from the first half of life to the second half of life. And in the first half, is part of it is the adulthood. And then you can imagine, as when you get out of college and you start looking for a job, there's this sense of transition again, something new. I don't need to study anymore. I might have to prepare projects for my boss and things like that, but it's a transition period. After that, when you start to settle down and find a partner, that is a transition again. So basically, what we're talking about here, all these movements in life is about transitions. And the adult stage is the one that has the most transitions. And transitions actually means a lot of stress. There are demands on both. Nowadays, what does it look like for the young people? I'm talking from, I'm a baby boomer. So I was born in 1957. So my experience of what it was in the 20s, 30s, and 40s is different from what the young ones, they're the millennials today, what they're experiencing in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. So let me just bring up a few things that they may be experiencing. And you might be somebody there listening and you say, yes, that's exactly what I'm experiencing at the moment. So basically what's different today than what was ongoing for my time when I was in my 20s, 30s, 40s was something about gender, the context of men and women in today's world. I noticed that sort of it was understood in my time that I would stay home and bring up the children. And my husband would go out and work and he would bring home the money, and I was to keep the home stable so that he could come home and have everything sorted when he came home. But that's not what we find today. Women today want to become freer, to become economically independent while having children. And on the other hand, men want to partake more in the running of the family and have less pressure to be the main provider. Men want to be also more involved with the upbringing of the children. Women can have today, what's also different is women can today have the freedom to reproduce later and freeze their eggs beyond the biological limits. So if you have that facility available to you, something will change. You know, the way you face life or the way you do life will change. So you would probably give a lot more priority to work before you settle down for having children. For the young ones today, the adults, there's a lot of pivoting and adapting which is required for them. Okay, let's have a look at this. Adulthood is a time of high energy, raging hormones, reproduction, and career development. This was just a small picture of the whole range of the developmental stages of a human being. And it's just showing you that after adolescence comes young adult. Okay, and what does a young adult experience nowadays? A young adult is trying to individuate. He's trying or she's trying to find out who she really is. A young adult is looking to become intimate with somebody else, having a partner in life. A young adult is developing their career, attempting to find stability and desiring, if they find a partner, to settle down. A young adult is investing in their own home or apartment or condo. And a young adult who finally found a partner, who finally is intimate, who finally has a settled career that's giving them a reasonable income, is now settling down with a new unit. In other words, a new culture, not their parents' culture, but their own culture. So this is now, let's say you're now finishing that young adult, you already have your home, you already have your children, and suddenly you're finding yourself in a crossroads. You're bored with your job. You're bored with your wife or your husband as well. You're bored with life. And things are just not going according to how you plan. You suddenly find yourself in a crisis or in a crossroads. And what's typical of that crisis is there's inner conflict. You're not happy. You can't understand what's going on. Remember what I said about the monks? They were just like, I've been here 20 years and I'm not happy. Suddenly there's an awakening. And suddenly you're finding yourself shifting, right? And suddenly you're saying, I don't want anymore what I've done for these past 20 years. I'm sick of this. I want something new. I want something fresh. And actually, it's really, really hard to break out of all of this. I can feel stressed. I can feel like people don't understand me. And I want to do what I want to do, but I can't really break out of it. It's difficult. So let's look at what happens in these triggers in midlife, okay? So suddenly you have this inner conflict. It's a realization and you're starting to begin to see things more clearly or more differently. Let me just go back one. At this stage in life, there's a growing sense that something is missing and a feeling of emptiness announces the arrival of midlife. Individuation, that means that what I really want to know and who I really want to be, not what everyone else has expected me to be. I've given my life to my career that will support me and my family. I've given my life to cover all the family's expenses. So I chose the job based on an income, including the perfect home, the best school, the right car. I no longer am impressed by these things. Something deep in me wants to come out. That's the more or less inner conflict. It might look different for you, but there's something that's a sense of dissatisfaction. Okay, and I welcome people who will share what they're experiencing a little bit later on. And how was this inner conflict at a crossroads or an awakening or a shift or a feeling of, I just want to be me. I'm not going to be the person that everybody was expecting me to be. Earlier, I was talking to a firstborn and she was saying, all my life I grew up doing exactly what they wanted me to be responsible, to provide for everybody, to provide for my parents. I felt a lot of pressure working and getting the best job. Now I don't have a job. I lost my job 1 week ago and everybody's angry at me and blaming me and I just want to be me. This person was actually telling me that I just want to start, going out to the bars and drinking and everybody's angry with me. And it's like just listening and it's like, whoa, this sounds like this person is just going to be going through their midlife, right? And finally, just give me a break, everybody, give me a break. It starts with that, just give me a break. So the triggers. First and foremost, if you would look at the mirror won't lie, okay? You start to see yourself in a way that this body is no longer the body I have when I was in my under 35, right? You are starting to notice physical changes. Then somehow there's this pause, like this person that I just told you, stumbling upon the apostrophe of life between growing up and the beginning of growing old. That apostrophe for this person I was talking about is the person had just lost their job and forced to sit down and think and really reconsider her whole life. So what does that mean? She had a pause and she had a chance to think and pray and ask herself, what do I want? The death and sickness of a parent might be the one that would trigger it. What about a pandemic which forces you to your cell and not be able to go out, which forces you also to think and to reconsider, right? What about the death or sickness of a friend? In your mid-40s, mid-40s, you're visiting people who suddenly your good friend has cancer. And you start thinking, oh my gosh, is this a sign that I'm aging as well? Is this a sign that I'm not invincible? Is this a sign that I'm a human and I can get sick too? You start thinking. And then how about this? You are in a job or you never reached the pinnacle of your career, which you expected. You studied well, you studied hard, you didn't get all the breakthroughs in job opportunities, and you're realizing that you have a lot of regrets in your life that I never got to where I was and time is running out. Have you thought about that? Are you there? Or have you got a more unique but similar experience to that? That now you're beginning to think, what's going on? You're also beginning to realize perhaps that you're becoming obsolete. Like, I can't keep up with all this technology. Like, you go to the airports and you have to check in and everything is, there's no person to talk to anymore. And you just have to press all those buttons and then give your luggage away, put your own tags and and that's it, and like, oh my gosh, this is not as easy as I thought it used to be. I'm so used to doing it one way, and there's some person who just takes away, checks me in, takes my luggage and all that sort of thing. And suddenly you're not that comfortable with the fact that you feel like you're becoming obsolete. You can't keep up with all this technology. Somehow it would be good to start thinking about what is really going on with you. Are you one of those person who has those regrets? And have you sort of avoided them or denied them or pushed them aside or pretended that it's not really there, but you're hearing this niggling voice that hey, you could have done better. Hey, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you get to that stage? Hey, you studied so hard. What your sister did better than you, or your brother did better than you. Take note of those voices and understand them. What is really going on in your heart? And this is a time for you to stop and ponder and understand what's really going on inside you, and allow yourself to just face those things and allow yourself to really connect with the desires of your heart and decide, like, okay, I might have missed some opportunities and I can be sad about it, but I got other things instead. So this is time to reflect and to find out and do the interior work. Listen to the small still voice that's calling to you, and understand what that small still voice is really telling you. Often it's about your desires, your longings. And if you don't listen, it will take its toll. You will grow old and be miserable. So if you are having this crisis at the moment, this is an opportunity. Actually, this teaching can also be called crisis or opportunity. So yes, it might be a crisis you're having. You lost a job, you lost your parents, your friend died of cancer, you yourself got sick or whatever, like you're in pandemic, you can't go out. But consider whether you could use this as an opportunity as opposed to a crisis. Feeling a need for adventure and change is another characteristic of your midlife. It has this feeling that you're bored and I'm like, I don't like this anymore. I want something new. I want an adventure. And part of that boredom is your preoccupation with your signs of aging. Something that you might learn to repress or today I was chatting with my sister and she decided not to dye her hair anymore. And my sister is older than me. She's 68. And her husband told her, hey, you look like a lola. And she was so upset that her husband told her that she looks like a lola. And I said, you should have told your husband he's a lolo as well. So I said, like, I couldn't understand why she was upset. And I said, but you are a lola. So why are you upset about it? Let's face our age. We're coming to this age where we are in the age or in the stage of life where we're having our grandchildren now. So to brush it aside and not to face it is going to bring you trouble in the future. At this stage you are groping towards authenticity. Can you imagine? You're looking at the mirror, all your hair is white, and you still don't want to believe you're a lola. Okay? I no longer want to suppress my identity, my need to meet an ideal. So there's this, it's a groping, like I'm beginning to realize I've been living this life that's not true. And I have this image of myself that I want to project as who I am. But the truth is, I really need to face myself already in the mirror, and this is where I am. So I want to get rid of that ideal, and I want to just be me. And that's not that easy. And I can imagine that there are people out there who know that that's not easy. one of the things is you probably learn to repress certain things in your life. And that thing that you repressed is wanting to rise up now. And there's this sense that there's this something in you that's wanting to come out. And that shift is coming from within. And if you don't sit and be quiet and notice it, you're not giving yourself a chance to become who you were really created to be, or you were really made to be. And take note that where it's coming from, that it's coming from your core self. And that core self is where your ground of your being is, meaning to say that's where you're rooted, that's where your values are, that's where your beliefs are, that's where your longings are. And that's where you are, that's where your roots come from, and that's where you grow up to become a tree, like a tree, you know, a person, a full-blown person. And if you don't let that blossom into becoming your full-blown person, you would have done life half-hearted or half a life rather than a full-blown life. And that's what the midlife crisis is to encourage you to become the best and to become the full self that you were designed to be. The early years of optimism and energy are ending. You're beginning to notice that you're getting more tired more easily. And as a result of that, you're having to look at your realities. What about when you're starting to lose interest in the things you do? Your energy level goes down. I can't do the things I used to do anymore. If I could stay up late until 2, 3 in the morning and wake up at 5 in the morning to go to work or what, I can't do that anymore. So I have to go to bed a little bit earlier, or I can't go to work. I might miss work and I'll just go to the work later. I've reached my goal, but is this what it is all about? And you suddenly feel disillusioned, and with the dreams you had, you pursued those dreams with all your might, with all your heart, with all your strength, and suddenly, like, was this it? Is this what it's all about? Like, it's not that great after all. Or you buried parts of yourself and you're slowly rising to allow, something is slowly rising to allow us to know and live out parts of ourselves that were buried. Okay? I've reached my goals, but it's not as satisfying as I thought it would be. Are those words that you say? I worked so hard for those goals, but is that what it's all about? Let's look at one more thing that you might be feeling. Are you angry? Are you blaming somebody for where you're at? Or are you sad and you felt like you've lost some things? At this point, there are many divorces. Just like the monks who left, there are many marriage breakups, and there are much blaming that goes around. One of the things that happens here, and one of the signs for a midlife, is when the nest becomes empty. When the nest becomes empty and you're left with your spouse, and then you realize, either one spouse is too busy working, and then the other spouse is too busy looking after the home, and now there's nothing to look after anymore, and they've left the home. And then now, is your spouse your friend? You don't even know your spouse after all those years, 25 years. And now you start blaming each other. Or this might be a time, because you can reflect a bit more, you're blaming your family of origin. I'm in this situation now because, my parents were not so supportive, or my brothers and sisters, they got everything, I got nothing. What about those things? Or you're blaming the circumstances, not liking what you're going through. Just like, it's that job, it's that boss, or we lived in the wrong area of town. And so you're just blaming everything around you. Or now you have to deal with your separateness. that now you're standing just you and your husband, or you and your wife alone, or your husband has passed away, or your wife has passed away, and you're all alone. That suddenly, or your husband is sick or your wife is sick, and you're beginning to realize, I'm not going to be with this person for the rest of my life. How am I going to be on my own? Am I going to be okay? All of these are jolts. All of these are wake-up calls. There's a need to do the internal work rather than look at all the external circumstances. It is time for a wake-up call. Here is the graph. So if you see this, the pre-midlife is dictated by others' expectations. This is a Jungian. Carl Jung is a psychologist who looked into situations, and he died in the 1960s, I think. And this graph does serve a purpose so that we can find a new equilibrium. He was very aware of that. People go through midlife and then they lose their their persona, but which I'm going to talk about more in a while. And so by midlife, there's this like new law. There are inner conflicts, and there's like this new thing that's coming up, and you're adapting to inner realities. And then you move on to post midlife and see things will change, things will shift. Triggered by noticing that one is physically and psychologically tired of having a facade, a mask. No more masks. I want to be real. I do not want to be so interested. I'm no longer that interested in status or performance. And all my frameworks that used to help me keep up my ego are no longer important to me. So that job that I wanted to look good, that car that I wanted everybody to appreciate, that address that I wanted to show off, all those things don't matter to me anymore. And there's something new that's coming up that's more important, that matters now. Underneath all the padding is where that person is hiding, in true vulnerability. Perhaps at midlife, one is able to stand naked again, with no covering to make it look pretty. Circumstances within, the inner path. Problems will confront you at noonday sun. That noonday sun is the perfect timing, or what we call in Greek kairos. Jung calls this the introversion. How people see me, my persona or my mask is no longer important. I no longer need to hide anything about myself. I suddenly allow things to awaken from my unconscious to my conscious. So to me, that sounds like an opportunity. The crisis brings an opportunity for you to wake up and to see things in a different way. So what is this persona? It's a social mask presented to the outside world. And now you can drop it. This is a picture of the masks we paint here when we're studying about this. These were all the participants' masks, and each one of them has an explanation of why they painted it this way, why they painted it that way, what were they trying to live with, what were they trying to outgrow. In our growing up years, each of us creates a persona in order to adapt to the expectations of our parents, our teachers, our religion, our culture. Society lets us know that certain traits are acceptable while other traits are not. So then you have the dark side. You have to hide certain things. That's the shadow. So the persona is what puts forward, and the certain things about yourself, which is your shadow, you have to hide behind. Society tells us what is approved in girls and what is approved in boys. We incorporate these characteristics into our senses of who we think others want us to be like. So we conform, right? And in the midlife, we no longer want to conform. No more. I'm not going to conform anymore. I want to be just me. Culture has strong opinions about people who do not play their expectations, their expected roles. Look at the journey. The journey to become one's unique self, the second half of life, by Carl Jung. Now, this is a stage of life that one goes through where there are realizations and is essential for the development of the self. And letting go of who we are in order to become who we are supposed to be. How sad that is if you don't get that second chance to be exactly who you want to be. This is another story of my friend who was her parents were in business, okay? So she was expected to study business. She never really wanted to study business. She really wanted to do psychology. But in the end, because of the pressure of her parents, she studied business, and then she was expected to work in the business of the family. By the time she was about 35 to 40, she really felt like she wanted to get out of that straitjacket. And at about 35, she switched course. She started to take up psychology. And she was the one who taught me about the different transitions of life. So she was one who was speaking from experience. Self-actualization from unconsciousness to consciousness, a slow movement. Take note of that. I mean, to all these people I'm talking to right now, can you remember a time that you noticed that I didn't realize that about myself like 3 days ago, and suddenly now I'm beginning to realize something about myself? And how did that happen? What's going on that now I'm becoming conscious of something that I really want? And I lived 40 years or 30 years not really being able to access that longing or desire. How weird is that, right? The midlife passage is an entranceway into the deepest layers of one's soul. What about the characteristics of people living in the second half of life? So suddenly you learn to recover from falling by falling, but sometimes we really have to fall. You fall and then you recover by falling. And it's only in the falling, when you're down and out, that you begin to get up and really understand what's going on. One begins to take risks and go on an adventure. And that adventure is like, I don't want to be an employee anymore. I want to start my own business. And you're too scared to start your own business because you've heard all the horror stories of people who started their own business and it doesn't fly. It doesn't become a good business. So will you live all your life scared or fearful about starting, and you know it's coming from within that you really want to do this and you don't take a risk? Then you'll never go on your adventure. Because of the stress of adulting, one learns to become more empathetic towards the other. So you have this thing now that you're evolving and you're becoming different, and you're having your different aura and different personhood who's like now understanding the other because you've been through a lot yourself. In the first half of life, we learn and follow the rules. In the second half of life, we most likely will not be under anyone's rule, but we will be using the rules that we learned in the first half of life. All the discipline you learn under the boss, when you become your own business, you need to implement all those disciplines and more. So you need to be mature enough to move into the second half of life. There's a sense that it's time to sort things out. No more, enough, I have arrived. It's deadline time. There's a sense of time running out and a last chance to be who you feel you would want to be rather than to be what others expect you to be. At this stage of life, you are called to be a wise guide. God planned our two halves of life for this reason: time to give back and regenerate. That's ideally what the second half of life is. If you can give your wisdom, if you can give your knowledge, if you can give to others, this would be a time that would be different, because in the first half of life, you're just taking for yourself so that you could be established. So second half of life is for regeneration. And that, my friends, is the story of the two halves of life. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer your questions. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share with you about my knowledge about the two halves of life.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lita, for enlightening us with your presentation. We do have a couple of questions from our viewers. And first off is, would you be able to share some, would you be able to share from your experience or any of your personal, what have you encountered? What have been your sort of personal things that realizations you've had during this second half of life?
Oh, during the second half of life?
Yeah, during the second half.
Well, I think almost that last slide about, I went through my first half of life fighting discipline, fighting my parents, and, defying the discipline that they wanted me to have. I was used to be truant in school and not, didn't take school seriously. But when I started to go into the second half of life and really know that this is where I should be and this is what I have to accomplish and this is what I have to do, boy, did I realize that all that discipline was really required, because I would never be able to accomplish what I've accomplished without all that discipline. I think that's the main thing that really touched me. And that was written by a book, Falling Upward by Richard Rohr, where he says, we discipline people in the first half of life and teach them sort of waking up early, submit all your projects, doing the homework and all of that. And in your youth, you rebel against all that. But when you go to the second half of life and you really want that adventure, I really want to do that. And you won't be able to do that if you didn't have the discipline from the first half of life. That's my realization.
That's amazing. And there's a reason why. And sometimes it comes, it comes much later in life for some people. Thank you for sharing that. So as someone who personally, I am not yet in my second half of life, how does one prepare for that? Or is there a perfect timing or a perfect time to
I think it's about awareness. One doesn't really, not everybody, okay? 80% go through midlife, 20% don't, according to the books, okay? So take this with a grain of salt, according to the books that I've read. Only 20% of the population do not go through a midlife. But I think it's about awareness. If you are aware about exactly what's going on with you, I wasn't aware at all. I had an explosion. In my midlife, That thing about you're blaming everybody, I went through exactly that. I was like, my life is a mess because of all of you, and never looked inside. Why is my life a mess? So I had to learn the hard way. But if you're conscious and you're aware and you're knowing, okay, this is what's happening to me. I'm, sort of feeling this and feeling that. Oh, and since you've heard this teaching, then probably you will know, oh, okay, that's what's happening. I'm actually dissatisfied. How can I become satisfied? What I need to do. I just exploded like a volcano. I don't want this. I changed my country. I moved away from the UK at 40. I divorced my husband at 40, and I started a new job at 40. So that was a big explosion.
Mm-hmm. Big explosion. Wow.
But that was midlife. If only somebody could accompany me and tell me, you're just going through midlife. You can just chill, okay, right? Don't explode. Like, take things easy and, work it out. Talk with your husband. Understand why you're changing job. Understand why you're moving country. those are the things, like, why are you dissatisfied? It's really about having somebody like a mentor walking with you who understands these things. But very few people understand these things. And that's the reason why that Anselm Grun, who's a monk, who wrote about it, because he wanted to understand about it.
Mm-hmm. Right. And also that's why, we have people like you as well to help us, Okay, we do have one question here from one of our viewers, Mr. 𝘕𝘢𝘭𝘠𝘭𝘢. What advice can you give for those under midlife crisis, especially during the pandemic?
Definitely get accompaniment. Definitely talk to somebody who knows about it. Definitely, don't do life alone. And since it's pandemic, it probably is magnified. It seems worse. It seems worse than what it really is. And so I don't know. We have this Project Presence, which we do a service for free, where we have our ministers who are willing to listen and just sort of accompany you. And we don't give advice, but we know how to accompany people and help them out in their journey in life.
Wonderful. Can you also tell us more about Cherimoya Eco-Spirituality and Retreat Center, and also on the third day Renewal or Information Center?
Right. On the third day is the ministry, right? So we're just a bunch of people who accompany those who come here or those who join our courses. We have 3 courses that are like first level, second level, and third level. So we're starting that next February. We've ended already this September. And we also have courses like this that I just taught, that you can just come just randomly. We have a whole menu that you can pick from, and we have something like this once a month. And then you can ask for our services. We accompany people who are going through things, and we're trained to do that. And we don't advise, we just listen, and we're just present. So don't do life alone. And the place where you can have your quiet time is in Calamba, Laguna. That's where we're at, and we're open now. We have 10 cottages where you can stay and spend some time being quiet, figuring out, doing the interior work. Like if you're going through, you want to know what is going on and what do I really want out of my own life, and what's all this confusion about. We'll be there to guide you. We'll be there with you to guide you.
Wonderful. Okay, we have a few more questions. Does midlife start before 40? Is there a pre-midlife?
Transitions is very fluid, right? So like menopause, like pre-menopause, or andropause, there's pre-andropause. But you're already, if you're starting, we say 35, but it depends really. It's really unique, it depends. Like you might be already feeling not comfortable, before 35. I'm trying to understand, like, what's going on. I'm not really happy with my job. I've already had 3 jobs, and you're starting to think, what's wrong with me? You're actually very normal. That's just like that. Those dots, those little dots there, you're trying and trying and trying and trying. That's very normal. So you can chill, and you're really just looking for the shoe that fits.
Okay, that's right. So we have another question from Mr. Roger. Do we all experience midlife crisis, or sometimes we are just not aware?
So I told you about the signs, right? And if you've experienced any of those signs, or you may want to, is there a sign that you're wondering, was that midlife or not? I think that would be easier for me to answer. If you're asking that question, you might have noticed something that you're wondering, was that midlife or not? And if you bring that up, maybe I can help you with that.
Yeah, Mr. Roger. If you have any specific questions, Mr. Roger, please feel free to ask Ms. Lita. Okay. So another question is, what is your message for those who are still on the first half of life?
Listening to this, right? And knowing you're there, right? You're in the first half and you're feeling all that pressure and all that. It's like something that you can't really do anything about. That's just how it's been designed. That's just how life. You're laughing, Jess, because I know I think you know what I'm talking about, right? When you're sort of just moving here to there, to here to there. And like, you're beginning to think like, is this about me? Is there something wrong with me? Or what's the matter? Or it's like, no, that's just life. And it takes trying a lot of shoes before you can really finally know. And it's about aging. It's about suffering. It's about pain. One does need to go through all that suffering and pain to become wiser. You know, I met a man in Ireland. He was our tour guide, but he was an ex-priest. And he was a priest for so many years. And then he was like getting uncomfortable. And then he ended up becoming a tour guide in the island. And he was giving a tour on Celtic spirituality. And eventually he also got married. And he said, it's really about a pilgrimage, that moving from one to another, searching and looking for what is it, that I was designed to be. That is the part of the pilgrimage. So if you change your mindset to sort of, I'm just doing the journey in life, the pilgrimage of life, looking for it, and finally, and hopefully I will find it.
It reminds me of that saying, diba, yung parang, it's not about the destination, it's the journey, no? That's where you really find the meaning while you're going through it. And you almost parang, there's no perfect life, and you're always, as much as we try to avoid the issues, the struggles, the strife, we really just have to go through it and really face it, no? Because that's the only way for us to grow, the only way for us to really parang get that depth in finding out who we really are. If we don't put ourselves out there, we don't try push ourselves, or we don't go through that struggle, we won't really know.
It's about the experience, right?
It's about
so one day, Jess, you'll be teaching this.
One day. It just comes, it comes, I ask so many, I'm so amazed I look up to so many people who are much older than me. And, I just, parang I'm almost excited sometimes. I want to get to that level of maturity, that level of just wisdom. And I can't have it now, I can't. It's just, it just comes with life. It comes with aging, yun nga, we're celebrating Elderly Filipino Week this week, no? That's why, even though we're not elders, eventually we'll all end up becoming elders. And I think, yun nga, with, it becomes, we will become wise eventually. So I think that's something to look forward to, actually. Yeah.
Get your senior card.
Ayan, we have some more questions. What can you say is the greatest gift of the second half of life?
I'm actually writing a book about it. And I think it's about knowing that's what you were really created to be. And knowing that you're gonna live the rest of your life fulfilling what you were designed to be. And finally, knowing that all the experiences building up to that last or to that stage of life where you're going to live it out, last chance, and do it well, you will use all the data from the first half of life so that you can do that well. And not make the same mistakes.
Okay.
So you get a second good chance and don't miss it.
Okay, we have another question here from Miss Myrna. So some people seem to be continuously seeking spiritual answers, but some are just okay watching telenovelas and living normal lives, and they're okay. So is there an explanation for this?
I think, I have exactly the same observation, and I have exactly the same question, right? But to me, my answer to that is really we're all unique, right? And, I mentioned that the perfect timing, what we call the kairos, that something just happens and boom, you get awakened or something comes up to your consciousness. So I think that those people that you're observing, whoever you are, who asked that question, who are just happy watching, and sometimes I also feel like buti pa sila, they don't have to dig so deep or worry too many things about what's really inside here. How am I confused? But they will have their time. God will give them their time, and it's just not yet their time. So I can let that go. I can just understand and know the difference, that we're different.
We're all different, yeah.
And I'm wondering if that answer is good enough for the person who asked that.
I hope so. I hope that's okay, Miss Myrna. Another question. Does childhood have something to do with the way one can manage midlife or the challenges of old age? So does childhood have something to do with the way one can manage midlife or the challenges of old age?
Definitely, childhood has everything to do with whatever you become at an older age. And that's where your roots begin. So that's why I talked a little bit about the rootedness. And if your roots are a little bit shallow and you were not, sort of well nurtured when you're younger, it's most likely that you will struggle more when you're getting older. So that's why we're here, to help people sort of figure out all these things that they're experiencing through their life. Hopefully not too late. And hopefully this weekend we're giving a retreat. It's called the Inner Child Therapy, and it's like going back to your young years so that you can figure out and how it is to take care of your inner child, because there's always that small that voice of a child within you that really wants to come out and wants to become childlike. And what I would say is, access that child within you and allow it to be that pure child that you would have been when you were younger, but just maybe got, sort of discarril, lost your track.
I think we froze. Yeah. Okay, you're back. Okay. So thank you for that. Okay, so one last question, and we call this the NPDC question. So one of our viewers is asking us, this is for you, Lita, get ready. It's our Miss Universe question. If you are to become a flower, what flower would you be and why?
Flower will I be? Is that your question, Jess?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's the NPDC question. We always ask this.
I think I would be a 𝐿𝑦𝐯. Do you know what's a 𝐿𝑦𝐯?
Wow.
It's like a ginger plant, but it's got a very, very sweet smelling. It's white, and it only flowers in the rainy season. I like to be watered.
Why?
Because
Why?
I
What about the 𝐿𝑦𝐯? What characteristic?
Oh, it's sweet smelling. It stands upright and tall.
Okay.
And I like to be watered. So I only bloom in rainy season.
Oh. Oh. Beautiful, beautiful. Nice answer, nice answer.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you.
Okay, and I think that's thank you, Tita Lita, for that answer, and for answering and giving us this really wonderful intro into embracing the second half of life. And I'm sure our readers were really fed tonight with wonderful wisdom from you and from your presentation. A lot to think about, But of course, to all our viewers, for those of you who want to learn more, please do not hesitate to reach out to Miss Lita 𝐿𝑦𝐯. We want to be able to also help you guys, and I think the mission here is really to help people, and help us get through life. We can't do it all alone, and if we have people who are experts in this field, it's a way of God speaking to us, I guess. So thank you again, Tita Lita, for tonight. We really thank you for celebrating this with us. And we definitely hope to have more of these talks that are, thank you so much.
Thank you, NPDC. God bless you all, and may you, may you grow and be of service to many, many, many more people.
Thank you so much. All right, so thank you also to all of our Zoom participants and Facebook Live viewers for joining us for this webisode of Park Conversations, Embracing the Second Half of Life with Miss Lita Quimson-Feliciano. So please don't forget to check your chat box in the comment section for the survey link. Make sure you answer them if you want to receive your digital certificate. So again, we'd like to thank our speaker, Miss Lita Quimson-Feliciano, for sharing her knowledge with us. If you missed some parts of our webinar, please feel free to rewatch it on our Facebook page. This video is available on demand. And if you want to also reshare it, please do, and stay tuned to our future webinars and online events. Follow us on Facebook, npdc.ph, and also on Twitter, npc_ph. So again, I'm Jez, and I am so grateful for all of you watching and grateful for Tita Lita. Thank you, and have a good night, everyone. See you at our next Park Conversations.
Thank you very much. God bless you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.